Greetings! I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today we will be asking the Herbert Erpaderp questions. And by we, I mean you. And by questions, I mean, well, questions. But before we get to that, as I assume you can see, the background in this video is 7 Days to Die. And I thought, why not remind people that I have a 7 Days to Die server running, which currently has Alpha 19 Experimental. Eventually it will move to Alpha 19 Stable, and at that point I'll probably have to start a new world. I might do it anyway even if I don't have to, because it is kind of fun starting at 0, but what I'm getting at is if you would like to play on our server, which is pretty casual and friendly, feel free to ask to be whitelisted in the appropriate channel on Discord. And now, time for questions. First up, a voice question from Major General Bunk.
Do you cook any meals yourself? If not, have you considered learning how to?
I can and do cook meals myself. Not usually anything fancy, mostly stuff like pasta dishes and meat and vegetables and things like that. For the most part, I don't really like to cook, mostly because it means I have to clean. But sometimes I do hear about something interesting that I would like to try, and then I give it a go, with varying degrees of success of course. Something useful I learned to make is a basic pasta sauce from scratch. Well, if you count using canned tomatoes as scratch. Personally, I think that's fine. Some might get really upset by it. I guess the most interesting thing I tried was an apple-stuffed chicken breast, which I then cooked for my friend who very much enjoyed it, though the mood for that kind of thing doesn't strike me very often. Jack647 said, "What is your professional opinion on koalas?" Koalas are fine and dandy. They're a good native Australian animal, and it's upsetting that so many were lost in the recent fires, along with many other animals of course. They're like big fuzzy stoners, and unlike human stoners, they're cute. You certainly shouldn't try to cuddle wild koalas though, that will result in scratches and probably bites. Don't do that. Digital Rocket said, if you could have a DLC made for any game ever made, would you do it? And if so, what game would it be? And what would that DLC contain? By have it made, would I have to fund it? That's the question really. If it didn't cost me anything, sure, why not? As for what game it would be, it was kind of hard to think of one, but the first thing that really came to mind is Train Sim World. I would like to have some local trains to drive in that game. There's a bunch of stuff that it could contain, like suburban trains, modern electric or old diesel-hauled ones, or even steam, though I don't think Train Sim World has any steam yet. And there's a bunch of locomotives that I would like to see in it. I'm pretty sure you can get stuff like that in some of the older train games, but I want it to be shiny and new and fancy. Rid Phoenix said, is there a specific reason you don't build planes that often? Or do you just prefer other vehicles? There isn't a specific reason, I just find things like tanks and other ground vehicles to be more interesting. Ratto, in a related question, said, why do you like tanks more than planes, ships, starships, trucks, motorcycles, etc.? I'm not sure, I guess it's just the way I am. I don't think there's anything interesting or profound about it, but I suppose I could make something up. Actually, that seems like a lot more effort than it's worth. We'll just go with, it's just the way I am. Monol said, have you ever experienced Deja Vu? This question gave me Deja Vu, and I would swear this has been asked before, possibly by Monol himself. I'm too lazy to go back and find out if that's actually true though. So I guess yes, I have experienced Deja Vu. Ratto said, if you could eat one greater demon, Bloodthirster, Great Unclean One, Keeper of Secrets, or Lord of Change, which one would it be? I guess it depends on what flavour they are. I don't think googling about them would reveal that to me, so that'll probably remain a mystery. The Great Unclean One doesn't sound appealing at all. Keeper of Secrets is probably a mystery flavour. The Bloodthirster is either just plain old blood flavoured, or maybe something tasty that's coloured red like raspberry, so maybe I would choose that. Lord of Change might be flavoured like loose change, and that doesn't sound very good, so let's go with Bloodthirster. Why not? Smoes said, have you ever seen the film Down Periscope? I don't think I have. It is possible that I have seen it though and forgotten. Hobbit Feetman said, favourite type of music? I wouldn't say that I have a single favourite genre of music, because only boring people pick a single genre and stick with it. I do mostly like metal and hard rock though, and I guess I would lump punk in with that as well. I also rather enjoy comedy and novelty music like Weird Al or The Arrogant Worms. There's a lot of other really good stuff out there too. Personally, I'm not a fan of things like dubstep or electronic stuff, and I'm not into most rap and pop music, and generally I prefer stuff made with real instruments that can be performed live. Live music is awesome. Musei said, if you were to ever open a miniature golf course, putt-putt course, what would you name it? Butt-putt. Ha ha ha! I'm an adult. I guess if I was really to open one, I would have to think a bit harder about a name. Probably something to do with the theme of the course, and if it were me, it would probably be a tank-related course. Nah, fuck it, butt-putt is good enough. Red Phoenix said, if for some reason all models were destroyed and all companies who made model-related stuff went bankrupt, in other words, no more models, then what hobby do you think you would have? I would still have hobbies like music and video editing, I would just have to find something else to make videos about, and I would still have mouse and fish keeping as hobbies, and I would probably read a lot more too, and of course there's video games. Maybe I would take up painting, like on canvas or something. I'd still have plenty of stuff to fill my time. In fact, I've never understood people who only have a single hobby or interest. It strikes me as weird, but then it's just as likely that I'm the weird one. Martin Gotham said, does the Land Down Under have their own air display team? We do, they're called the Roulettes, and that's about all I know of them. I've never seen them do their thing, but maybe one day I should change that. Jono said, do you ever just slide around on floors with socks on, or is it just me? There's no way it's just you. It doesn't work very well on any of the floors I have where I live now. I mean, they are tiles, but they're a bit rough. Trust me, I've tried. When I lived in a place with hardwood floors though, hell yeah, lots of sliding. Musei said, which do you prefer more, War Thunder or World of Tanks? Neither, really. They're both more or less the same thing for me, a place to derp around in tanks. In that regard, I guess I would prefer World of Tanks, simply because I have more tanks to choose from. Also, War Thunder always had that really glitchy movement for me. If I felt like flying planes, I would choose War Thunder. Obviously that isn't a feature in World of Tanks. Neither game really holds my interest for very long, and I refuse to do any grinding in either of them to get new vehicles. It just takes too much time for something that, to be honest, I don't really care about. I'm sure that saying they're both the same sort of thing will really upset some people, because they choose not to understand that different people can have different opinions about games, and I do find the whole World of Tanks vs War Thunder thing to be kind of exhausting. They're both free, grindy games designed to take a lot of your time, and if possible, money. I think people who, for whatever reason, pick one game and then get hyper loyal to it are weird. I mean, I guess it's fine if you're hyper loyal and keep it to yourself, but most people like that don't. They always feel a need to be vocal about their choice of game. It's never interesting when they are vocal though. Also, both games have some pretty terrible communities that I would rather avoid. Hobbit Feetman said, do you own a model railway? I don't. I don't have the space for even a small shelf layout, though I have considered that. If I did build something, it would have to be portable because, well, I don't own this place, and I would really prefer to have something big. I do actually have a handful of old N-scale stuff, a couple of locomotives and some freight wagons, though the engines are kind of old and have been sitting for so long that they probably don't even work anymore. I have actually been looking at model trains lately, and I know there are clubs around town I could go to, but I see the price of locomotives these days and I realise that I've got better things to spend that kind of money on, like car registration. Less fun, but actually better. In the YouTube comment section of last fortnight's Ask A Herbert Erpaderp, Trekan Beluvic said, my guessing, next Ask A Herbert Erpaderp will be number 123. Yeah, I'm sure it will be number 123. You were right. Wait, no, the other one. You got bamboozled. Haha! Yantima said, do you think that all police officers are bad? You make it seem like that a bit. I didn't think that you are such an idiot. It would be very naive to say that all police officers are good, but no, obviously not all police are bad. It's almost always foolish to say that all of a certain group have exactly the same characteristics. The problem with police though is that they're very protective of themselves, which isn't always a bad thing, but when they're covering up crimes they themselves are committing, and those not doing the bad things are just turning the other cheek, you can see why some people might say that all cops are bad. There are plenty of cases where a good cop tries to speak out about injustices, and they almost always have bad consequences for people trying to do the right thing. That makes police much less trustworthy as a whole, even if not every single officer is actually a bad person. As an example, if you were a cop and you saw a fellow officer, say, kneeling on somebody's throat and suffocating them till they died, and you didn't try to say, hey, this guy's unconscious, maybe get off his neck, or something like that, and you just stood there and watched, I would say that you would also be a bad cop. And a bad person. I guess the answer is no, not all cops are actually bad, but they might as well be, or at the very least, shouldn't be blindly trusted. Joe Cox said, "I'm sorry, but you saying 'send the social worker' reminds me of the scene in Taika Waititi's Hunt for the Wilder People, where the social worker turns up in an armoured personnel carrier. Very good film and I would recommend it if you haven't seen it. I completely agree though, there's no way the LAPD needs an M113, the steel box made famous in Vietnam. And if a situation arises where there is need, just call the army. I like it the way we have in Scotland, with community officers, nice people who respond to minor things and do the beat, with the shitbag police reserved for dealing with other shitbags. Guess I have to include a question. Are you interested in helicopter models? I haven't seen the movie, but I do like Taika Waititi, so maybe I'll check it out. And to be honest, sometimes there might be cause for a social worker to, well, maybe not show up in an armoured vehicle, but certainly with backup, preferably trained backup that can restrain themselves and not fire their gun as soon as somebody hurts their fragile ego. I think I was actually asked recently if I like helicopter models, but I do have an interest in them. I actually happened across one on Amazon the other day that I thought would be interesting to build, so I bookmarked it and will probably pick that up next time I buy models from somewhere. Almost certainly not from Amazon, but somewhere. I'm totally blanking on what kind of helicopter it was though. EP Art said, "What are your thoughts on the recent Reddit/YouTube/Twitch purge? I bet you are glad to see Nazis BTFO'd. I'm not quite sure what BTFO'd means, but I'm assuming the B stands for booted. I'm always happy to see Nazis and racists and the like get the boot, though to be honest I haven't exactly been paying close attention to those purges, so I haven't really had many thoughts about them. Though I did see something about Reddit removing something like 2,000 subreddits for racism and hate speech, so it's good to hear of those platforms doing something positive. I'm sure somebody might say, but freedom of speech! Or, why not be tolerant of other people's opinions? And I would say to that person that you don't know what freedom of speech is, and that tolerating Nazis just leads to more Nazis. Mark Ferguson said, well actually it's quite a long comment and my throat is starting to hurt, so since this is the last question I'm going to just leave it as text on the screen that you can read, though I don't intend for that to be rude or anything. In regards to diabetes, I don't expect anybody to remember particular health conditions that I have. I am effectively just a random dude on the internet after all. And with ice cream, my doctor would probably say not to have any, but would also agree that it's fine as a treat. It's mostly a me problem. I'm not very good at self-control. I mean, it is quite easy to not buy ice cream, but if I do buy it, it's also really easy just to say, hey, a huge bowl would be nice, since it's there and why not? And I agree that fat-free and sugar-free ice cream and other desserts and things like that are just depressing and not quite right. They are getting better, but they're not quite there. Gun culture in the US in general, while still a bit odd to me, I think is fine. Like yeah, have a gun or maybe a couple of guns in your house, or a collection of interesting and old weapons or whatever, but the kind of extreme gun culture is really weird. I mean guys that think they need a machine gun and 7,000 rounds of ammo, and 20 boxes of grenades laying around the house where little Jim Bob Jr. can play with them, or take them to school. I know most gun owners aren't like that, but I feel like the US would benefit a lot from more sensible gun control. Obviously there's a lot more to it than just saying that. I guess that's getting off point a bit. Anyway, I do enjoy thoughtful questions, even if we never agree. It's still good to talk about things. Also, I do answer questions regardless of a person being a patron or not. I mean, I do only answer voice questions from patrons, but I would feel bad charging people money just to ask me things. I really don't want anybody to feel obligated to be a patron for any reason, or sub on Twitch or anything like that. I think I might be going into waffling territory, which isn't as tasty as you might think. So let's have a look at some of the models that have been shared on Discord over the last couple of weeks. First up, Delta shared this Sherman with the deep wading trunks. This model looks great, though I don't know anything about it other than it's in 1/72nd scale, and as you can clearly see, it's been painted very nicely. Delta shared a reference image that they used to paint this model, and while I'm not showing it here, it looks like they got pretty close to the picture. Very nice work. Ratto has shared this angry looking stick-wielding giant, or is that actually a log? The red makes me think it's already had at least one victim. This model is a giant from Masterbox. I had no idea they made giants, but that's pretty cool. Ratto plans to use it for Chaos and Mordheim forces. Awesome. Corned Beef has finished this Centurion Mark 5-1, and it's now prowling around in the yard. This is the AFV Club 1/35th scale kit, and I think it looks awesome. It's a very nice and neatly painted tank. I've got this kit and I will eventually finish it, but for now it's nice to see how the finished product looks. SpaceFan247 shared this rather American M41, which was made for the 4th of July. If you've been around for a while, you won't be surprised to learn that I enjoy tanks painted in odd and colourful ways, and this certainly ticks that box. It's pretty well done too. The stripes on the rear are a bit messy, but SpaceFan mentions that it was difficult to mask. I guess you could make up a story about whoever was responsible for painting it being rushed for some sort of 4th of July parade. Either way, I think it's cool. I especially like that final fireworks image. It actually makes the model look quite convincing. Very nice. Trekan Beluvic shared this pair of Humvees with tow missile launchers. I like how one of the launcher guys is pointing at something out to the left. I suspect that whatever it is might be about to receive a missile as a gift. These awesome little vehicles are 15mm scale plastic models from Battlefront, which Trekan is going to use for his Israeli force, which he's made his own cards for that were shared on Discord a while ago. I don't remember if I shared those, but I really liked that idea. Also, these models have been painted quite nicely, but you don't need me to tell you that. The Flanders Pigeon Murder finished this Universal Carrier. I'm not sure of the scale or maker of the kit, and I think it is in a larger scale, but what matters is that it looks rather good and is very well detailed. That antenna looks very nice, and the red ends are quite eye-catching and interesting. I don't know if this is something based in reality, and I don't think it really matters, but it does look very cool. Also, I don't know who Foggy is, but apparently somebody wants them to fuck off. Good times. Commissar Tuppy has shared this Illuminor Caesarus model. I don't know that I've said that quite right, but this is very cool and there's a lot going on. Is that a big splatter of blood there, or is it something else? Either way, this is awesome work. And that's it for models this fortnight. As always, a big thank you to those who shared their models, asked questions, and especially those who watch all my videos. Ask A Herbert Erpaderp will be back in 2 weeks, so get your questions in. I'm sure you know where they go. Don't forget to check out the 7 Days to Die server if you're into playing that game. Also, I'll be streaming it a fair bit, so drop by my streams. It's sensible times whether I'm building models or playing games. Also, do all the things like subscribing and following if you haven't already. Links to all of my things are in the comment section below, and as always, I shall return soon. So until then, be excellent to each other, and thank you for watching. Farewell.